Pretty soon, the man who practically came apart on a date because she cried can do what now with tears 10 times as bad? Turn around, walk right out of the room and laugh. Now what's she think? This thing is not going very good for me. My only method to obtain what I want has failed completely. I can't even bother him anymore. And this last weekend, she said he was going fishing for 4 whole days. I've lost all means of control. Is that frustrating? Are you beginning to see what we mean by gambling or deprivation? It's a very subtle thing, but we use it all the time, day and night, to obtain whatever we want. All right, let's go to the next one. Verbal attack. I'll give you some quick words. Have you ever heard of nagging, criticizing, arguing, demanding, quarreling, ordering? Has this ever gone on in your home? Don't answer me. When it does, are you in a contest? Yes, you're maneuvering. And it's the same as physical attack. Remember how we said deprivation was the same as stealing? Verbal attack is the same as physical attack, only it's in a little more refined basis. She knows what? I can't win physically. So we've done what? We want it fair, don't we? I mean, it wouldn't be right just to beat her up. So we've switched from physical, which is unacceptable, to verbal, which is acceptable because it allows for the equality. And to have a marriage in our society, does it not have to be a 50-50? Each with a 50% chance to win the fight. And therefore, does it have to be verbal attack? Right, if physical attack were allowed, then could we have a 50-50 fight? No, in most cases, he could win. All right, the next one is the one the salesmen use. We're going to call it coercion or manipulation. Another way to describe it is when a guy gets his pencil real sharp. Have you ever heard that expression? Where that means he's figuring it pretty close and you end up losing. All right, the next one is limited warfare. Now, limited warfare means 2 things. Number 1, the time duration has been spelled out by society. And number 2, the weapons that you're allowed to fight with have been dictated by society. In other words, society says, all right, you 2 guys, you really want to fight, we'll let you fight. But you can only fight in so long a period of time, and here's the weapons. All right, some illustrations. Debate. Have you ever heard of debate with a rebuttal period? You have judges. Is the debate a limited warfare? The weapons have been chosen, the time has been set up. All right, let's take another one. Courts. Always remember now, in all limited warfare, you both parties lose. You never win. All right, when I go to court, is the time limit set up? Are the weapons chosen? By the way, the weapons are so special that the average citizen doesn't even know how to use them. You get fined for contempt of court and all other kinds of things. So therefore, we have to hire attorneys who are more skilled with the weapons that society has chosen. The next one is bargaining tables. Can you begin to see this union in management? And we have words like compromise. The next time you feel you've compromised with somebody, have you been in a fight? All right, the next one is arbitration. In all of these, do we set up a judge who rules on us after we have finished our warfare? And it's interesting, all the psychological things that goes on between each party and the judge, and all the negative feelings. And by the way, even the judge loses in this. Because no matter who he grants as winner, neither one of them like him. All right, the 20th one. I just hate to mention this one in a way, because this is one of our ideals. This is one of the things that we die for in our country, and it's competition. And it's supposed to be so holy, isn't it? Let me give you some words for it. Cutthroat, price war, struggle. Now, competition is necessary for 95% of the population. We might as well face it, because how else are you going to motivate them? You see what I mean? You got to do something to get them going. Even Russia's found out they have to use it. But competition always ends up with a winner and a loser. And the things that we mentioned prior on winning and losing, do they still come into effect? Now, a sales manager wants to get a group of men moving fast. The quickest way that he can get a spark is competition. But yet, it destroys his sales force. His turnover is tremendous. And when a guy needs help, can he get a buddy to help him? No, the guy turns on him. Take parties. Every party probably you've ever gone to, what do you suppose the hostess has done to get some live interest? And she doesn't want the party to flop, does she? So she's got to do what? Get fire in the party. Well, you know how you get fire, you fight. So everything that she does is what? Contest. Let's take something just as simple as ping pong. I watch full-grown men in a simple ping pong tournament become more ambitious than if they were playing for $1,000 stakes, because their ego was at stake, their ability to play. The next time you're in charge of a party, let me give you a challenge. Organize the thing without any contests. Have unity relationships, have in-group kinds of games and feelings where people help each other. Now, you'll work probably 3 times as hard to plan the party, but will you have more success? You will, because you will not have any ill will. Competition, even though it's necessary, it provides an energy loss. I think really the reason is that we're not created to lose. In other words, within your being tonight, psychologically, there's no mechanism for losing. So what did God make you for? Winning. In other words, you're only created to win. You're not created to lose. Therefore, do we have good losers? The team that gets the sportsmanship trophy, I guarantee you they didn't win. The winner doesn't need it. He's happy with the victory, doesn't need anything else. But does that trophy, or even a consolation tournament in basketball, you know, where the worst find out who's not so bad, they're sort of sad, aren't they, when you go to those kind of tournaments? In other words, we all want to win, and competition proves that you have to have a loser. All right, let me give you 2 places tonight where competition is wonderful for the ideal individual. Number 1, competition against myself. Can I have ill will? No, because I'm competing against myself. One more thing, too, I might mention here. Whenever you're going to compete against yourself, always set it up so you can't lose. Now, if you lose, will that affect your self-image? You don't want to lose. I do this all the time. I set up competition with myself and I win. Then when I'm sure that I can take the next step, I set up another battle and I win. What am I doing to my self-image? Building it. In other words, I never lose. All right, the second method of competition is against the elements. I can compete against machinery. In other words, can I use aggression against the weather? Now, there's a reason here. Does the weather harbor cumulative ill will? No. In other words, we're saying then that when I use competition against the elements, against material, against things, against ideas, can this cause any type of ill will? No. Therefore, this kind of competition is wonderful. So we say then that when I cross the line from a negative syndrome to a positive aura, I'm doing what? I'm finding out that there are one segment of this world that I don't compete against. People. Isn't this easy? Just make up your mind that I'm going from below the x-axis to above the x-axis. It's when I compete with somebody, I've done what to them? Dehumanized. It's interesting to go to a college campus in the fall. It's Friday night before a Saturday afternoon football game coming up. And they've got somebody, stuffed clothes and everything, and a painted face to resemble either the coach or the quarterback or somebody on the opposing team. What are they going to do with him that night? They're in a procession, they've got torches, and they're carrying him to the bonfire. They're going to burn him. What do they have to burn him for? Isn't it enough to go out the next day and have a good, clean football game and beat them? No, in order to have competition, what do I have to feel about that team? If I'm really going to get the feeling, they can't be human, can they? We do this with Russia, don't we? We halfway keep them human, and we halfway keep them dehuman because we don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, do we? If there's going to be a war, we want to be able to do what real fast with the whole country? Dehumanize them. I mean, if we're going to drop A-bombs all over the country, we're not going to do that to people, are we? This is why when you go to war, how should you fight? I mean, if you want to live a happy, healthy, psychological life the rest of your life, how are you going to fight? You're not going to shoot people, are you? If you should happen to go to war, and if you should happen to shoot people, where might you be for the next 20 years? Laying on some couch talking to some psychiatrist. We've got them from World War II yet that are sick. Now, what if you go to war and there's no humans out there? Just rats. Be they German, or be they Japanese, or be they Russian. Is there anything wrong with your conscience in shooting rats? All right, now, bring the same thing back to competition. Well, let me give you the same illustration with two little boys. They were out fighting, and they had sticks approximately, 18 inches long. And pretty soon some more boys came along, and there was a real little war going on out there, and they divide up into sides, and this one side beat the other side. Now, are they going to admit that they're beaten? No. Well, they cry a little bit, but pretty soon they come back with bigger sticks, about 4 feet long. The other side looks at the sticks. Now, if they got bigger sticks and won, would they feel like it was a victory? No, because then the other side would say you have bigger sticks. So the only way they can feel a victory is to choose what kind of sticks. Same size. So sure enough, they come out with the same kind of sticks and they fight, and then the other side wins. Then the side that gets beaten. By the way, they kept doing this, and I watched every time they came out to battle, equal weapons. Has this been true throughout all history? We always fight with equal weapons. Finally, they had the broomsticks out there. Then a mother came out and took all the broomsticks away. The mother I would compare to the police force. What's going to happen to you in our society if you start fighting? You'll go to bigger weapons, then to bigger weapons, and then finally the police will do what? That's enough. You can't fight. Then you go into court, and then are we back underneath regulated warfare? So can you win a contest, really? Thinking of one particular gentleman that was in the seminar, and his boy came home from school, and he wouldn't speak, wouldn't eat, went to his room, wouldn't talk, and it was about 8 o'clock before they finally got it out of him. He didn't make the track team. That was the only thing wrong. He suffered for about a week. I mean, this was quite a blow to him, because he couldn't figure out why he wasn't good enough. He'd been trying for months to make this team. All right, now we have discussed the second method to obtain what you want. It's called contest or conflict, and we've gone through the 20 basic categories of how you use this system. All right, we're ready for the third method to obtain what I want. And I have a little poem that will describe it. If you want to be rich, give. If you want to be poor, grasp. If you want abundance, scatter. If you want to be needy, hoard. Does that sound like contest? Does that sound like competition? It's just the opposite, isn't it? In other words, I'm going to do what now with everything I got? Give it away. Completely the opposite of going out and fighting for what I want. Now you realize why we're down to only 5% of the people now. Because they can't comprehend how I can be wealthy by giving everything I have away. In other words, they believe that's the quickest way to go broke. They believe if I'm going to have it, I'm going to go out and fight it, and I'm going to get mine while the getting's good. I'm using these expressions that are common. If you don't protect yourself, nobody else will. I mean, this is a philosophy of the negative syndrome that we talked about last week. But the minute I go into a positive aura, how much is there to go around? Enough for everybody. So if there's enough for everybody, why don't I give? If there's an abundance, do I have to fight? No, so everything I got, I just turn around and give it away. And before I know it, I'm a millionaire. And the guy who's still down there grabbing those pennies just doesn't comprehend it. He said, I don't understand it. Why does that Pollyanna have everything? I'm the guy who's got down here and fought. I'm broke. So he's confused. So what we're basically talking about here is the law of fair exchange, and this is the method to obtain what I want. In other words, I have something, you have something, and we exchange and we both win. But I can't use the law of fair exchange until I first have a role relationship. And only 5% of the population are capable of role relationships. What we want to do tonight is describe role relationships the rest of the evening. In just passing, and this will be on another tape, let me tell you what the fourth method is to obtain what I want. But I just want to mention tonight, the fourth method is to share. This is the most beautiful method because in this method I have everything that you have. And everything that you have, I have. And we're in a perfect unity relationship. Therefore, I have everything. We'll go into this. This will be a fascinating study all in itself. All right, contest versus role relationship, and let's discuss role relationship. Now, since role relationship is so foreign to you, it's best to discuss the universal law of role relationship in the physical, without discussing people or roles that people play. In other words, we want to go right to the universe. We want to study the physical laws. And by studying the physical laws, we'll end up understanding role relationship with people. I'm going to draw one circle and call it a male role. I'm going to put a tag on it. This particular diagram is the male sperm from zoology. Over here will be another circle, which I'll call the female role, which is simply a round circle which represents the egg, and this represents the sperm. And these produce a union which is productive. In other words, role relationship gives me something which is productive. The male role is a selection, and the female role is a recipient. The male role initiates the action, and the female role consents to the action with the 5 S's. And the 5 S's are surrender, subordinate, subservient, subject to, and submission. Over here we have on the male role all of the authority, which is positional, and all the responsibility. Positional simply means the authority was delegated. Now when we combine those two roles, we have what we call basic role relationship. Let's define it by many things physical. Let's start out tonight with a key and a lock. You'll be able to plug these in very quickly. The male role is the key. It selects the lock. It initiates the action. It has delegated authority and responsibility. The lock is the female. It's the recipient of the action. And as for the 5 S's, can you hear them as I push the key in? Who gives way to who? The lock surrenders to the form of the key. All right, now after the key's already in, clear to the hilt, would you call that enough submission? No, we haven't been productive yet. I'm going to turn the key. Now let the circle represent perfection. What's the lock doing as I turn the key? Those tumblers then are giving way to the form of the key. Do I have continuous surrender? Then we say that I have complete submission of the lock. Then the door opens. Do I have productivity? I now go through the door. So we say then by being submissive, the lock opened and allowed productivity. Had the lock been stubborn or rebellious, we couldn't have got through the door. Let's take a ballpoint pen. Push on the top of it. That's the male role. The casing of the ballpoint pen is the female. Now, it's not productive unless it writes. What if the female is stubborn and jams the male and will not let the ballpoint come out? Throw the pen away. It's a non-productive unit. But when the ballpoint can come through, and it's interesting to know, the male is always the greater, the female is always the lesser, but the greater goes into the lesser. We have a hot plate here, and on the hot plate we set a pan. And pretty soon the pan is boiling over. Now, my productive job is to get the pan off the hot plate, but it's too hot for my hand. Now we say my hand is playing the male role. Over here I have an asbestos glove. That's the female role. All right, as I put my hand into the glove becomes the female role, and as I reach over I can easily pick up the pan and take it off the stove and nothing has boiled over. Now, should the asbestos glove decide to make a contest out of it and not be submissive, would I get the pan off? Have you ever cleaned a burner that boiled over? We call that the results of contest. That is non-productive. Let's take your shoes. I'm walking down the street on gravel. I suddenly decide I should go the opposite direction. I turn and I start walking back. Can you imagine what's happened on the sole of the shoe of my foot? Has there been some grinding? Some irritation? Has there been some wear and tear? All right, we say the sole is playing the female role to the shoe. Did it do whatever the shoe said? The shoe is playing the female role to my sock. I'm getting a chain of command here. The sock is playing the female role to my foot. By the way, is my foot protected from the gravel? And I have a regular role relationship. Is there any rebellion in the chain? In other words, does the soul say, wait a minute, let's wait until we get on grass before we make the turn. This is too hard on me down here. No, in order to have productivity, do I have to do what the brain says immediately? So I have immediate obedience, immediate action. All right, let's go to the housewife. Does she do something similar to the soul on the gravel when she changes the diaper? Scrubs the floor, does the ironing, does the dishes. The salesman, does he go out into the cruel world and fight? Does the sales manager sit back in the office? We're saying then the higher up I go in the chain of command, do I get further away from the wear and the tear? Then according to this principle, where should you want to be in this world? As high up the chain as you can possibly go. But our population wants it just the opposite. You ask a man, would you like a promotion? Oh no, there's too much responsibility. I would rather stay where I am. In other words, we shun higher positions because we've been taught responsibility is evil. Let's take another illustration. Let's go to electricians. They're not bashful. They'll tell you which one's a male plug and which one's a female plug. By the way, an extension cord is only valuable if it has a male and a female. People are always asking me, I don't like to play male roles, or I don't like to play female roles. You want to know a secret? You can't play a male role without playing a female role. Nor can you play a female role without playing a male role. You've got to be plugged in, don't you, to have power? An extension cord is no good if I don't plug it in. Let's go to another field, plumbing. Everything in plumbing, believe it or not, is male-female. We don't have to use just electricity in plumbing. Take any of the trades you want, or take any connection in machinery. Is it always a male and a female? Let's go even further. Every working relationship on the face of this earth is male-female. You can think of anything you want. Take the hinges on a door. The pin that drops through is the male. Would the hinges work if I pulled the pins? I'll give you another illustration. Down at the train yard, there's a boxcar. I'm going to compare that boxcar to a woman. There's no relationship here to size. The boxcar wants to be productive. Now, to be productive, I should put something in it and ship it to New York. So this is wonderful. But on the front of the boxcar, there happens to be a female connection. There's a locomotive that happens to have a male connection. Now watch, the grader, which is a locomotive, backs into the boxcar. Do I have contact again? The boxcar now can do one of two things: rebel and sit there in the freight yards forever, an old maid. Or what could it do? It could submit and do what? Allow the locomotive to go into it, connect, and could that boxcar go to New York City? And would it be productive? I don't know what lesson ladies can get from that story. But it does illustrate the role of male-female. If we wanted to, we could spend the rest of the evening just going through physical relationships. Always you can tell role relationship is because there is an actual working relationship without damage. If you'd like to, just let your mind ramble for hours. In fact, tomorrow you're going to be amazed. Everything you pick up, everything you do, you're going to find out, sure enough, there's a male and a female. I think you'll be amazed when you discover that's all the world's made up of. At the very bottom of the chain of command, you're dealing with actual elements or with things that are inanimate, and you're dealing with real competition. But as you go up the chain of command, you're getting away from it. You're moving more into role relationships. Now that we have covered it in the area of the physical, let's relate it as far as people are concerned. There's going to be one basic problem. If a relationship occurs on the board that you do not like, it will mean that you are having trouble in that area. But if one goes on the board and you say, that's exactly the way it should be, then this means that you have a satisfactory relationship. Spend the evening on the one you love. Because if you look at the one you do not like, you'll miss the whole principle. Now, the secret of the thing is that if you finally realize it's a universal law and it works in one area, what will happen to you during the week on the area that it didn't quite fit? Well, I'm hoping that it will gnaw on you until you really resolve the fact that you're going to settle it and straighten up that relationship. All right, the first relationship will be the male role will be God the Father. The female role will be Jesus Christ. All right, let's see how well Jesus Christ can play the female role. Was he subject to in all things? Did he surrender? Was he submissive? Was he subordinate? Was he subservient? All right, was he a puppet? Yes, he was. Was he a rubber stamp? Yes, he was. Was he a carbon copy? Yes, he was. Now, did this take anything away from him? So many people are afraid of submission because they're afraid they're going to lose their individuality. We say that because he was submissive, he became an individual. And he played a perfect role of the female role. All right, let's go to the next step. We're going to put Jesus Christ in the male role and man in the female role. I know some people have been all mixed up when they study the scriptures of Christ's behavior, but it's very simple. You do what? When he acts a certain way, you find out whether he's playing a female role or a male role. Does he play the roles differently? I mean, you can't hardly recognize the same person playing the different roles. All right, let's go down on the earth now and take a master as the male role and a love slave as the female role. We'll have to go back in history to demonstrate this. But it used to be that if you were a slave and you worked for your master, there was a period of time set up at the end of which time you were given your freedom. Now you had a choice. And notice up here we have choose. In other words, consent is an act of choice.